Lingus, you barbarian, let your Italian hands roam all over my body. Ugh, you're such a gifted orator. Unsheath your sword, I implore you. Spear me, you dictator. I'm about to climaximus. What we do in life echoes in eternities.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of Two Peas on a Podcast, where we review the latest and sometimes greatest movies every week. Gerald is here, and over on the other side is Nicholas Aurelius. How are you, sir? You came in full garb, armor, and the Sparta helmet and everything over there. You're looking good.
The ghost of Maximus Decimus Meridius is here with us in spirit today as we discuss Gladiator 2, I think it was. Actually, it's Gladiator, the way the title is in the movie. Gladiator.
Yeah.
What's up, baby? How's it going?
It did that in the title card too, didn't it? Or am I remembering that wrong?
It did it in the title card.
It did
movie,
like a 2, and then
it just says Gladiator, and then it splits apart and shows two eyes, so it's Gladiator.
Yeah, weird stuff. Ridley Scott, he's back. 2000, obviously winning Best Picture. Russell Crowe winning Best Actor, considered one of his better performances, and really one of the kind of seminal films since the year 2000, Gladiator. And here we are 24 years later, a screenplay that's been bounced around for really since the first movie wrapped. They've been talking about doing a sequel for this, and they finally got around to doing it, and they were able to play on some different elements because it's been 24 years. We'll talk a little bit about how that stuff worked for us in the plot of Gladiator 2, as we're going to be discussing that one tonight.
Electric Boogaloo.
Boogaloo, too. Yeah, I don't really have a Spill the Peas segment this week, but I want to ask you a question. You want to roll the sound?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Hold on. Whoa.
You gotta ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
Wow.
So,
out of the blue.
Yeah, it is out of the blue. I mentioned it to you briefly, but this is one that could be considered Spill the Peas, but it's really the only thing I want to ask you about. I saw today, it came out from the Hollywood Reporter, that the top 10 grossing films of 2024, all 10 of them are sequels, and that's the first time in cinematic history that has ever happened.
What's the top 10, baby?
Films.
What's the top 10? Give it to me.
Let me click on the article.
Well, and here's the thing: like, Wicked's not a sequel, and that's gonna be in the top 10 highest grossing, right? That did pretty good, didn't it? I don't know how it did.
Yeah, it's doing really good, but that's a good point. I don't know if it has them listed here, but it has in the thumbnail. It has Deadpool and Wolverine, Dune Part 2, Beetlejuice, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Inside Out 2. Those are the ones that are in the thumbnail. I'm not sure what would round out that top 10. Anyway, I just wanted to hear
Furiosa,
your bud. Bottom 10, maybe.
Biggest 10 bombs of the year. It'd be on that list. That's whether you liked it or not. Okay. I can't control whether other people went to see it or not. I paid cash money to go. Well, I paid for my Regal subscription, which pays for it. I guess that technically. I don't know how the mathematics of that all kind of works out. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Like the year's not over yet. We still got more big releases coming before the year is over. Like I said, Wicked's definitely probably, I would say, going to crack that top 10 before long. I don't know exactly where that's in there, and that's adapted from a book, which is also adapted from the stage musical. So I guess it's not a sequel, but it's not an original property, I think is what the idea you're getting at. It's still derived from something else.
I'm just wondering where the originality is. If we're all but lost in that respect. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like when it comes to the GA going out to the box office with all the options that they have on streaming and everything else, I just feel like unless it carries that notoriety with it, it's getting tougher and tougher for like independent filmmakers and indie films to break through and make a lot of money. I mean, even the ones that get nominated for Oscars, hardly nobody ever sees them until maybe they're nominated and they re-release them. And everybody's like, oh, I need to go see this because it's an Oscar frontrunner or whatever. But it's not like it made a bunch of box office dollars when it initially came out. I don't know. It just kind of bums me out a little bit, even though I like a lot of the movies that are on that list that I just mentioned to you. I just feel like
I was going to say,
vanishing.
Wasn't Dune Part 2 a 10 out of 10 banger for you? Although technically,
you're goddamn right.
Dune Part 2 is technically just the second half of the book Dune. They just split the adaptation into 2 parts. So I mean, is it a sequel to the first Dune movie in the strictest sense? Yes, but really the first Dune movie is just the first half of the book, and then the second. So I don't know. That's kind of. I don't know if that's cheaty in there, but that's also a remake. Like, that's already been done. Like, Dune's already been done back in the 80s. So I don't know if that counts either. And again, another adaptation, again, derived from another source material, you know?
But such a good film. Am I right? Man, one of the best of the year. That Sandworm, I tell you. That was, I still think about that thing often.
I bet you do.
Dune Part 2. All right, I just wanted to ask you about that. Gladiator 2 is the main review tonight, Nicholas. Now, we start out every review talking about the movie by giving our scores out of 10, individual scores, and we have not discussed it with each other yet in the old early score reveal, buddy.
Damn it, this always happens. I think I'm going to score, and then I never score. It's not fair.
This is an interesting one, Nick. 24 years in the making. One of my favorite action movies of all time, Gladiator.
OG Gladiator is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. It is one of the best movies of the 2000s.
Banger.
I mean, it's legitimately an incredible film.
So now we have the sequel, right? Ridley Scott, same filmmaker. A couple of the actors returning from the original film.
Yep.
We'll talk about the storyline, but that's also eerily similar to the first film. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into our discussion. But let's give our scores out of 10, Nick. Here we go. I'm going to count us. You want to count us in?
3, 2, 1.
Wow.
No, subtract more points from that. More points from that.
Audio, real quick. Nick's got a 4 out of 10, and I got a 6 out of 10, which gives us a 5. A 5 overall on Gladiator 2. Man, what a shame.
The longer I thought about this after I left the theater, the more angry I got at it. This is Gerald. This is the case of one of a sequel that its mere existence lessens the power of the original. It's the Terminator Rise of the Machines of the Gladiator franchise. Remember how in Terminator 2 it ended with that, Sarah Connor driving down the road toward her unknown fate because they destroyed Cyberdyne systems and the Terminator was melted and who knows. And then Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines comes out and is like, nah, you can't avoid Judgment Day. Go fuck yourselves. That's legitimately, we'll talk about, the movie opens, like literally in this movie opens with Marcus Aurelius. In the whole first movie, this whole thing was a dream of Rome, give Rome back to the people because all this corruption and everything. And literally the movie opens is like, no, the dream's dead. Nah, this whole place is screwed. It's all corrupt. It sucks. I mean, legitimately, the script for this movie, I mean, this is why it took 24 years to get made, because this script is bafflingly bad. It's mystifying how bad this is to me. Now, really, really, visually, incredible action sequence. Well, with some exception, we'll talk about those, but like really visually, like excellent like battle sequences and like Colosseum gladiator type sequences. There's a lot of that kind of good stuff in there.
Sure.
Most of the performances, I'll say, are really, really good. But the thing, Gerald, the biggest reason, I mean, the crow of it and all that kind of stuff in the original script of the original Gladiator film that made it so great. What's the other element of the original film that made it such an incredible milestone like achievement? I know we talked about it when we talked about Joker 2. It's Commodus. It's Joaquin Phoenix's performance as Commodus in that movie. Yeah. He's such a deliciously evil, hateable villain. Like, you detest that character so much.
Yeah.
The villains in this movie suck absolute shit. They're
laughable.
They're literally like cartoon character versions of Commodus. That's literally what they did. They're literally almost like cartoon characters. They're so ridiculously stupid, and I hated this. Like the script for this is just so bad, and my score is going to be a 1 by the time we're done, because I'm going to get so mad about this when I talk about, like, when we get into spoilers and we get into even more of that stuff. Like, I have huge problems with the entire structure of this movie is completely wrong in my opinion.
Well, to keep it spoiler free, and then we'll get into spoilers on the other side of this. Just these brief thoughts I have in the spoiler free section. But I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate, and maybe this will come to fruition when you and I get deeper into our discussion. But I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate, like, being very entertained with a movie and being equally as disappointed in a movie. And that's where I was with this. Like,
I feel you there.
This movie was a spectacle, right? When we got the action set pieces, and I don't want to give any specifics away right now, but there's a lot of different action set pieces, and for the most part, they're all very thrilling and they're fun to watch. You don't need a lot of high caliber backstory for anything that's happening. You're just enjoying all this crazy balls to the wall shit that's going on the screen. But when you don't have that stuff, to your point, what a fucking mess that this story is and the screenplay is. And also, to keep it somewhat spoiler-free, but still kind of spoiling a little bit, is I felt like up until the last act of this film, this was the same movie. Like, I felt Paul Mescal was essentially Maximus in this movie.
It literally plays a lot of the same notes at different times than the first movie does, yeah.
You know, Denzel's character, which I loved, by the way, I mean, he also really saved this for me and got it to, well, a 6. But, I mean, it would have been worse probably without his performance being as juicy as it was. But, you know, his character is basically Proximo from the first movie until he's not. And we get to that last act, and we'll talk about that turn and stuff. But you know what I mean? It was a lot of the same shit, and it was following a very similar path and arc to the first film. Except in this case, it was Hanno, as he's referred to for the majority of the film, as opposed to Maximus. But otherwise, it's the same shit happening to this would-be, you know, soldier king type figure that becomes a slave, that becomes a gladiator, that's fighting his first freedom, fighting for Rome. It's the same story. So the whole time I'm watching that, even though I'm extremely entertained by what Ridley Scott is doing, and I do love the first one, so I can appreciate kind of the tracing the artwork, if you will, in this movie, and I did like a lot of that stuff, it was also a letdown at the same time, because 24 years and this is the point? Like, this is what we get after 24 years of cultivating this long-awaited sequel to, like you said, one of the greatest action-adventure movies of all time, in my opinion, in Gladiator. I just feel like it's a wasted opportunity. Like, they could have just done so much more with it.
There's so many different plot threads that are just dangling in this one. I mean, you could tell, again, this is a movie that they've been trying to make this movie for the past 24 years. I mean, this has always been talked about, even since when the original came out. And the question was always, well, what do you do? Maximus is dead. You know, so what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? But this movie has so many different random ideas in it. So many different random things. And it's like, I don't want to pick on Ridley Scott too much in this whole episode, but I'm going to circle back to Ridley Scott on some of this, because a lot of it's like the Alien prequels, like the Prometheus and it's all this extra additional complications that you added to where something this could be simplified. And I mean, I know Scott didn't write the script or anything necessarily on this, but I mean, there's way too much going on in this movie that just doesn't make sense, especially for like the first hour and a half. Like the first half of the movie, we'll say, and we got to get into spoilers before we can really crack into the rest of it. But I mean, for the first like hour and a half in this movie, I don't even know what's like. I mean, I know what's going on because I'm watching it. It's like you said, there's spectacle, there's really entertaining battle scenes and set pieces and all that kind of stuff, which is entertaining enough. But at the same time, I'm just like, I'm gonna be the guy that says it. Like, I don't care about Paul Mescal's character Hanno at all.
No,
I legitimately didn't get invested in him at all.
No, and when we get into the spoilers, I also thought they handled that very sloppily, because you could have very easily been connected to him. had they chosen to.
Yeah, we're gonna say the exact same thing about it then. As soon as all right, Dan, get in here and play the promo walk because we're gonna say the exact same thing when we get back. Dan, go ahead and spin it. Thank you, patrons. Thank you everybody for listening. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're talking about Ridley Scott's latest spectacle on the big screen, Gladiator 2, or Glad-I-I-ator.
Gladiator.
Look, Nick gave it a 4 if you didn't hear. I gave it a 6. I think it's fair to say we're both disappointed in the film. This is going to be spoilery the rest of the episode. If you have not seen Gladiator 2 yet and you do not want to be spoiled, make sure you skip ahead or come back after you've seen the movie. Nick, what I was saying about Hanno, played by Paul Mescal, obviously our lead character here, kind of in that Maximus role in this movie, is Lucius. We find out later in the film. Lucius is the little boy in the first film, maybe 12 years old, maybe something around that age. And Connie Nielsen's the mother. It's never really... I mean, I haven't rewatched the first one, but I don't think they ever really talk about the father necessarily in the first one, but it's implied that it could be Joaquin Phoenix in a little incestuous type deal, but they never really say.
They never outright state who the kid's dad is. The kid's dad is not in the first film at all.
Right.
Like, I mean, they definitely hint at a past between Maximus and Lucilla. During that movie, they obviously were lovers at one point in that movie before Russell Crowe was with, his wife and everything that he had in that movie. So that was... It's something that the film doesn't even really hint at, but you could infer it. But like I said, we're going to have exactly the same opinion here because why the hell didn't you just tell us that he's Lucius from the start of the movie? Why doesn't the movie start like there's an hour halfway in this movie? There's a scene where they flash back to the end of the first movie right after Maximus is killed and the procession goes out of the arena. They take the kid. She takes the kid and runs off with him and is like, no, we got to get him to safety because people are going to come and try to take him out now because he's the heir to the throne. Why was that not the opening of the movie? Why were we not following this character's journey from the onset of this movie? Because here's the whole damn time, Gerald, all I'm asking myself is, where's Lucius? Where's Lucius? Because we're seeing this other random person who's not Lucius, and I'm like, is that Lucius? Are they going to tell us that that's Lucius eventually?
Right.
Because they keep asking about his past. Where's Lucius? Why are these other two jokers in charge? Lucius is the heir to the throne. Who the hell are these other two, and where the hell did they come from? Why the hell are these... They are legitimately like cartoon... If you had somebody badly write a cartoon about Commodus from the first movie, that's what these two jokers would be. They are so badly written. It is pants-shittingly bad. It like literally full star and a half off of my rating just for how shitty the villains in this movie are. But like, I mean, why, Gerald? Why didn't they just tell us? Like, literally, the film could have started with his escape and like scenes of him as a young boy and trying to grow up and all this kind of different stuff and the places that he moves around to. Like, I don't mind him being Roman and him being, Lucius and everything, but then, the place where he's come to call home and he's got a wife and all this stuff is attacked by Rome, and he kind of gets this vendetta against Rome. I like all that stuff. I think all that stuff is good, but why do we not just know it's Lucius from the onset?
Yeah, I think the problem... Absolutely, and you were right when you said pre-break that we were going to share that sentiment, because I just don't understand the point of holding on to that plot twist, if you want to call it that, until the final act, when anybody that's seen the first film is going to have those questions the whole time. Like you said, I mean, they're showing the flashbacks of the kid that's playing Lucius. Connie Nielsen's in the movie still. She's the mother. Like, it kind of is alluded about her sending him away. But then another thing that kind of bothered me too is that when we finally do get that reveal, and it's finally told to us, even though we've been suspecting it, that it is Lucius, right? We find out who the father really was, Maximus.
Multiple times, which they make a point of stating it like a dozen times in this movie. Your father, Maximus Decimus Meridius. It's like, holy shit, movie, we get it.
Yeah, it was two... And producer Dan went with me to see this screening, and I can remember when that happened, that reveal that your father's Maximus. that Dan literally looked over at me like this and was like, "Oh boy," like I mean, it was just like the most soap opera-y fucking like plot drop ever. And
I can just imagine Dan just being like, "Oh Jesus Christ!"
But it's one of those things where you're like, they're not going to do that. That's too over the top. That's too stupid. And then they do it, and you're like, okay, well that happened. So a lot of the things they hold on to until the final act, which is really when we get our distinguishable parts from the first movie, because up until the last 20 or 30 minutes, like I said, everything was eerily similar to the first film. But when we get into that last act, the essentially Proximo character in this case, which is played by Denzel, we learn that he's evil and he's really power hungry, and he's making a play for the Senate and to kind of eventually become the emperor and get control over everything that he's been kind of orchestrating in the backdrop.
Like, let me tell you, like, I'm like, because you're exactly right. Like, the first half of this movie, at least, is really following pretty tight beat for beat with the original Gladiator. I mean, there's some different scenes staged in different areas. I mean, one guy gives Hano gives I think the other gladiator gives Hano the angle slam through a coffee table in that scene where they're at the dinner and they have him fight for whatever reason. So at that point I was like, well, this movie's a 10 out of 10 because he did a wrestling move and I love it.
Yeah.
But like I liked that was kind of the one turn in the film where you get to see that ambition from Denzel's character, and I really enjoyed that he kind of turned, and it wasn't just Proximo, because Proximo had a little bit of a nobility left to him where he was, no, I'm not going to do that, right. I'm going to let you free, I'm going to help you, I'm going to help you, Maximus, blah blah blah. I like that Denzel was just, Denzel's just using Hano. He's just using everything to just try to maneuver himself closer into power. Right. I enjoyed those aspects of it. And man, Denzel could chew some damn scenery when he wants to.
So good. Yeah, and I also loved in Denzel's performance too, Nick, what I thought there for a moment, and obviously Ridley Scott can be credited for this too, the way he directed it, but I think Denzel probably kind of flew on his own here a little bit. It was kind of on autopilot doing his own thing. I got that sense from him. But I also, what was beautiful about that turn to him really being evil and self-serving, that I didn't see that coming, maybe because it was Denzel, such an aristocratic actor and such a star. And, he's played villains before, but it's not something you look at Denzel and you go, I got to wonder about this guy, So maybe the casting was part of it.
Well,
but I just want to say real quick, I thought it was good in his performance how there were moments where I did kind of see a reflection of the Maximus Proximo relationship from the first movie, like when he went in to see Lucius when he was in like the hot tub after that one battle, and they're talking, and it was almost like he felt for what he went through, and he was appreciative of what Lucius had done for him. But Lucius basically the whole time was like, I don't fight for you, fuck you. Like, he just kind of had that mentality the whole time. But I kind of felt for a moment like they were going to have that same kinship that we got in the first movie, so that when the turn did come, at least for me, it kind of lifted the material a little bit. And I think a lot of that has to do with just Denzel Washington. I mean, the guy's a fucking, one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just going to add into that. I think that's exactly why it took you by surprise, because it took me by surprise as well, because like you said, it's playing so many of the same beats from the original movie, including playing on that Proximo Maximus relationship between he and Hano, that when he doesn't like try to reach out and try to save him at that one point when, he can let him loose or he can let him free or do whatever, he chooses not to because he's trying to maneuver himself into power. It's because the film is playing so closely to it's playing so much the song from the first film that when it switched in kind of mid-track, you're just like, oh, okay.
Right.
Which, I mean, can we talk about these absolute shitbag joke of characters that these twin emperors are supposed to be?
Yeah, so there was a moment when Joseph Quinn plays Emperor Geta, and Fred Heckinger plays, was it Caracalla?
Caracalla, yep.
So Caracalla is the kind of buffoon one. He's the one that's a little not all there, doesn't seem like the bright one of the bunch. There was a moment when I felt like he was literally parodying Joaquin Phoenix from the first movie.
Yeah.
Like, it was a very similar, like, mannerisms, and like I said, it was almost like he was playing him on an SNL skit or something, which obviously is not what you want to go for in Gladiator 2, the sequel. Like, I wouldn't think. So that's when right away I was kind of like, these guys are not going to be anywhere close to being menacing enough as in the first film Commodus was, because not only that, Commodus had that like personal connection to it with his father and always being in a battle with Maximus and, you know, fighting for his father's attention. I mean, what do these two have? Like, what's the connection for us with these two dudes?
That's why. That's the other thing that I really don't understand. And I mean, I'm sure there was some kind of scene that hit the cutting room floor that maybe explained this or something. But I'm like, who are they? Where did they even come from? You know, because I mean, obviously Lucius being gone would mean there's no heir to the throne, so somebody would have had to lay claim to it. But I don't know how the hell it was these two absolute ass clowns.
Yeah.
It does not make any sense to me, but the film never explains who they are, who they're related to, like who their family is. Like, I would have expected maybe to get a scene with Lucilla at some point where Connie Nielsen explains who they are, and it's like or even all she had to say was just like a throwaway scene of like, ever since my nephews came to power or something, like they're somehow related into that bloodline or into that family or something like that. But they don't explain who they are or anything, and that's the thing again. Holding that card of Lucius away from the audience and deliberately like trying to be a fat, like, ooh, this is gonna be a big swerve when we reveal it's really him. Like, no, it's not, because the whole time you're looking at these absolute clown shows in like this Emperor again. Like, it's like you said, like they're doing a bad parody of Joaquin Phoenix's Commodus from the first film, and the whole time, I'm like, where's Lucius? Where's Lucius? Where's Lucius? He was the heir to the throne. Where's Lucius? Where's Lucius? The whole time. Like, that's literally, it was so distracting to me.
And
that
they're showing you the flashbacks of the 12-year-old kid, too. So, like, I mean, you know it's going to come into play at some point. I mean,
yeah, it's like, it's definitely going to come into play at some point. Like, you've got to reveal this eventually. Like I said, the whole structure of the film is so piss poor and bad. And, like, I get, like, if you tell us he's Lucius from the get-go, and then you have him, like, he's adapted into this new life, and he lives in this new place, and then the Roman army comes, I don't even mind, like, repeating those same beats of him, you know, being a captured, you know, criminal of war, and, you know, being pressed into becoming a gladiator. And I don't even mind it playing those same beats. I'm fine with that. It's perfectly fine. But, like, the whole time, I would have rather known that that's Lucius, and, like, he's known, like, this whole time that this is his birthright and everything, and we know, like, this whole time that this is his birthright and everything to go back and take the throne, but he doesn't want it. He's settled into this new life. He doesn't care. This is what he wants. This is who he is, and now he's pulled back to Rome, and he's pulled back into these whole things, and I even like kind of this back and forth between him and General Acacius. We haven't even mentioned Pedro Pascal at all yet, I
was going to touch on that when you finish your thought.
Yeah, like, I love the back and forth between those two characters, and kind of Lucius obviously having like this intense anger toward him because he led the invasion against his home and his wife got killed. I love all that stuff, and I really would have loved. See, there's your battle, man, because you could have had such a great protracted kind of thing of Acacius. Of course, she's got a type, doesn't she? Roman generals, like first Maximus and now. But anyway, like she's with Acacius and everything, and of course that's obviously his mother. And I think honestly, the reveal would have worked better in the film if Lucius is the one, you know, because she all of a sudden just randomly sees him in the arena and he says a quote that she randomly also knew, and that's how she knows. Like that's how she knows it's Lucius or whatever. Like, but why wasn't it if you flip that scene? And if you flip it to have him come to her to reveal that, hey, I'm Lucius, even the reveal scene sucks because she shows up and she's like, are you Lucius? And he's like, I don't know who you think I am, or like all this stuff. It's this really weird, bad, awkward.
And then not only that, how quick of a turnaround is it for his character that now he is with his mother, you know? Because there's like two scenes and he's like, all of a sudden he's like, I love you and I'm going to fight for you, whatever.
It's what I was going to say
about Acacius too, Pedro Pascal's character is, he's another actor where you don't see him and go villain. You know what I mean? But why, when this movie was written or when they were casting the movie, or I'm sure Pedro Pascal could have done this, but why is that not the big bad? You know what I mean? Why is that arc not played through, what we see through Lucius's eyes, because he, Acacius is representing Rome. So he says, give me the general's head. He tells Denzel that. And his whole kind of mission through the first half or 2/3 of the movie is to essentially kill Pedro Pascal. And that's kind of why he's fighting in all these gladiator battles and trying to get to the main arena. Just get me his head, and then Denzel's like, I'll get you his head if you keep winning me money, or whatever the line was.
Right.
And that's his whole thing. And then that goes nowhere because they meet in the arena and he has like sympathy for him. But another reason why it sucks is because it doesn't work for us as the audience, because Pedro Pascal is a very sympathetic general. And even in the opening scene, when he does conquer that village and he's looking at the dead bodies that they have to, set on fire to dispose of, you can see that it hurts him, that he had to kill that many people to accomplish what these pissant emperors are trying to get him to accomplish. And he's a sympathetic figure through the whole movie because he goes to visit those emperors thinking that he's going to have some time off now because, he's been conquering X, Y, and Z. And they're like, not yet. We need you to go get, India and whatever they say, all these other countries. So he has to go right back and do it all over again. So there was no struggle for Lucius as the hero in this story to have a proper villain for us to root against, I didn't feel like, because the two twin emperors were just laughable. I mean, they were just two laughable cartoon characters, like you said, that really were never menacing. I didn't care what happened to them. Commodus in the first film was a fucking blood-curdling villain, but Joaquin Phoenix did such a good job in that role of having those hints of humanity too, and that not being able to please his father and that kind of shit. But none of that stuff is here in Gladiator.
You understand his motivation because his father, for all his faults, his father still doesn't choose him. His father chooses Maximus to lead Rome once he dies. And this whole time, they have that amazing back and forth. That's such an amazing, powerful scene between Phoenix and Richard Harris.
Yep.
Going back and forth as father and son about how, Marcus Aurelius failed Commodus and his failings as a son were my failings as a father. That it's all so beautifully written in there. So even as detestable as Commodus is, you really, really understand how hurt he was by his father's decisions and all those different things. And even in spite of all that, you still you find his actions absolutely reprehensibly detestable. Sends the army to go kill Maximus's family and everything like that after he won't swear loyalty to him or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, it's such a but none of that stuff is in this movie. You get absolutely literally none of that stuff in this movie.
And it turns Denzel into that character, the big bad character in the last act of the film. But my problem with that is that it's so quick and it's so abrupt that they're riding the horses out into the fucking fields and the army's coming to help Lucius and Denzel's going there to try to intercept him and cut him off. And it's all of that shit happens. And then they have their battle in the whole thing is 7-8 minutes. I mean, it's a really quick, turn to oh, this is our big villain. This is the one that Lucius is going to face off against. And that when it happens, it's underwhelming. And I mean, Denzel's great, but I mean, just the action of that final battle was so underwhelming in a Gladiator movie, especially if you're comparing it to the set pieces that we'd been seeing prior to that.
But we needed to see more of that kind of snake in Denzel lying, plotting and trying, twisting and turning his little machinations to try to get. We needed. I think that's both of the things that you and I are dancing around here. Is that this film needed a definitive central villain,
it did.
And I think that that's its biggest failing because in the first act of the film, you've got the clown show emperors who are just absolute jokes. Again, parodies or cartoon versions of Commodus from the first movie. You also have Acacius in the mix, who's a noble character, and you understand why Hanno dislikes the character, but we also side with him because he's with Lucilla and they're still wanting to overthrow Rome 18 years later and they still haven't done it. You know, so you have Acacius in there. I mean, like I said, if you tell us who Lucius is from the beginning, and then like you could have this whole thing of like he's so wrapped in grief of losing his wife and his home being destroyed by the Roman army, because he was sent away, you know, and like he understands why he was sent away, and maybe he even forgives his mother for it, but he understands, but this is his new life. Like he's over here, he wants this new life now, but now he's coming to clash with Acacius, and it could have been this great thing of Acacius not wanting to do battle with Hana, with Lucius's character, this whole beautiful back and forth thing, which culminates finally, eventually. That whole turn is even too abrupt when they arrest Acacius and throw him in the arena, and it's like you said, he and Lucius have that fight, and it's like a 30-second, like, Lucius is going to kill him, and then he's like, oh, no, wait, no, I know who you are. You're Lucius. That's your mom, and blah, 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 all this stuff. It's like a 30-second thing, and then the Praetorian shoots him dead anyway.
Yeah, and Denzel had been making little innuendos in the last act of the film too about him knowing that it was, you know, who it was. I know who it is. I know who, you know. So I think he knew or had a pretty good, you know, speculation. But it just happened so fast, man, that it was like I didn't care at that point. I just didn't care, you know. I want to ask you about the I think we're both in agreement that the screenplay really did not do this movie any favors, but I want to ask you about the action set pieces. You know, I mean, we get one of the reasons I want to ask you is because there was kind of this hubbub online about the inaccuracies in this movie, in Napoleon, which came out last year. And so people are pointing out stuff that honestly I didn't even realize, but you know, there's characters reading the newspaper in this movie, which hadn't even been invented yet. For example, for like 100 years before a newspaper will be invented. The sharks in the arena, the water in the Colosseum. I don't know. What did the monkeys, the CGI monkeys in the first big arena fight that we get, did any of that shit take you out of this movie, or were you just like, this is great? Popcorn stuff.
So here's what we get. Opening battle sequence with the Romans coming to assault the city in fictionalized African country. I can't remember what the name of it was. But that was great. Opening battle sequence is fantastic. I absolutely love the opening battle sequence. I'm like, all right. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Next action set piece is the CGI monkeys, which is awful. They look absolutely awful.
So bad. I didn't even think they were monkeys at first.
And the problem is everything else in the film.
Those?
I'm sure there's tons of visual effects and stuff like that in the film up to that point, but everything else is so grounded in realism that they stand out as even a worse element of just batshit insane looking things.
Yeah.
Like they just look absolutely ridiculous. Like I thought, I was like, did we drop into Wicked like at one point really quick?
Did you know the flying monkeys? And I'm not even. They did actually kind of look. I'm not even trying to be funny. Did you know those were monkeys right away though? Because I literally did not know. I thought they were going to be like I thought it was going to be like a fictional creature of some kind or something, because I didn't even know what the hell they were.
They looked like a fictional creature. Like they looked more like a fiction. Yeah, until they started making monkey noises. I was like, what the hell are those things? I was like, did this film just nosedive like straight off into like?
Are we in Narnia?
Sci-fi or like sci-fi fantasy kind of land or whatever like that? So that whole set piece was absolute ass.
Not
like
good.
Absolutely terrible. The Colosseum battles, I liked the champion with the rhino and like the, you know, all that stuff. How they tricked him in. I liked that one. That one was good. The water one, I didn't dislike. I thought it was fine.
Yeah,
the only shitty
it felt
thing,
a little far fetched, but yeah, it was entertaining.
The worst part of it to me is those ships are so big and there's not enough water in that arena to sustain those ships as big as they are. Yeah. So I would have liked it if, I mean, I don't even know how you would, of course it's ancient Rome. How the hell are you going to do it? Like, this is the kind of thing where you'd think about like a modern theme park, Gerald, where it'd be on like a wheels and a track under the water, like moving the boats around and the kind of thing or whatever. Like there's no way, like, the history of whether or not there was water they could put in the Colosseum and do all that kind of stuff aside, and which I don't care. Read a goddamn history book. You're not going to the movies for a goddamn history lesson.
I know. That's what Ridley said too.
I love Braveheart. It's got literally almost nothing to do with anything to do with the real William Wallace, except for that there's a character like in it called William Wallace who represents a character in history.
Sure.
Or a person in history. Like I get it. Go read a history book. Like movies are not intended to be history lessons, okay? But that not like I said, the biggest problem I had with it was a Snowpiercer kind of thing where it broke logic for me, Gerald, where I was like, there's no way that amount of water would be able to sustain those ships as big as they are. Yeah. No, absolutely no way. They would have sat on the bottom of the goddamn thing and just not moved.
For me, it was more so the sharks. I was kind of like, wait a second, what? How the fuck did you get
the sharks was a weird
sharks
element
into
too.
the Coliseum?
Yeah, the sharks was a weird element too.
I mean, it was entertaining. It was entertaining as hell. You know, I mean, I was like, all right, Jaws mixed with Gladiator. Let's do it.
I could have forgiven that if they would have just had some kind of Gladiator arena out on the water, like. Yeah. They have a special like water-based whatever. Who knows? I don't even know how you would do it, but
the reason I brought it up too is because there was an interview on the press junket for Gladiator 2, and somebody asked Ridley Scott a couple weeks ago about the historical inaccuracies in this film and in Napoleon, because there's quite a few in that film too. And he told him to get a life. So
yeah,
I thought that was
I agree.
You know,
movies aren't history.
He's trying to entertain people. You know. Are you not entertained?
A movie should be a jumping off point. Like, if you want to learn more about the history of this sort of stuff, then
Roman history
a movie should
or whatever,
be,
sure.
I'm really interested in that. Like, to go back to Braveheart for a second, like, I loved that movie so much. I did a lot of reading after that movie came out about the real William Wallace and about all that kind of different stuff that happened. And, you know, like, I really, really loved that. So, movies aren't history books, people. Like, you know, deal with it.
Last thing I wanted to ask you before we get to our Mount Rushmore, we're going to be doing the Mount Rushmore of Ridley Scott directed films, guys. So we're going to be doing Ridley Scott's Mount Rushmore here in a second. What do you think about Oscar chances? Because Denzel Washington is, I think, pretty close to a supporting actor nomination. But after seeing the movie, I don't know, man. I don't feel good about visual effects. We talked about the monkeys already.
Awful. They're so bad.
You know, maybe something like costumes. I mean, I don't know, but I'm thinking Denzel maybe in a couple techs, maybe, but I don't know. What do you think? Do you see Denzel getting his nomination for this?
I don't know. It depends on how strong the rest of the field is. I don't know. I mean, I could really
but his
see...
performance is good enough, though, yeah? I mean, I feel like he's really...
I feel like his performance is definitely good enough. I just feel like the role isn't written as well as it should be. I think that's the same thing that's going to hold back, like, a lot of people... Like, we even talked about it last week when we did Emilia Perez. I think it's kind of going to be a similar thing where I don't think the role has enough meat written into it. I mean, the performance is great. Performance is really, really good, but I don't think the role... Because all that, it's like you said, all that stuff with the swerve, with the twist to him happens so last minute in the movie.
Yeah, and he doesn't let his character be layered as it could be.
Yeah, he doesn't really get to kind of start chewing the scenery and start really laying on the chops until later in the movie. Earlier in the movie, it's really just an Oliver Reed impression. Like, he's really... And again, that's not a fault of Denzel's. That's how the character is written, is to really kind of toe that line of the Proximo Maximus relationship from the first film.
I like to believe, and I haven't seen this come up in any interviews or anything like that, but I like to believe that Denzel kind of winged it, like I said earlier, improvised a lot of his lines in this movie too, because there was just some really funny, kind of like out of context facial expressions and like almost like jokes. He like almost like a dad joke that he would drop, you know, in the middle of like this gladiator setting, and it stayed in. You know what I mean? And I love that. I can't imagine that it was written that way. He just kind of played it that way, so over the top, and he definitely made it his own. Where he was in this like Roman Empire setting, but he was like one of his characters from like Training Day or something. I mean, it was like a weird amalgamation of like his aura. You know what I mean? I thought he did a really good job. One of my favorite lines. And I'm not going to quote it exactly because I can't remember, but he's talking to his buddy about the senators or whatever, and he's like talking about one of the senators, and he tells Denzel, he goes, "Yeah, he doesn't like to lay with women," and Denzel's like, "Neither do I most nights." It just like gives him like a wink, you know, like a wink and a nod, you know.
Denzel's great in this movie. I mean, yeah,
he really is.
It's
he really
maybe.
Is.
I mean, well, I still haven't seen any. I haven't seen enough of the other stuff that I think would be nominated against it. So I don't know what. I mean, maybe on the fact that he's just Denzel would get him in there.
Help.
But
that's going to help. I've got him in my 5 right now. I think he's going to get nominated for this role. I think it's just juicy, and I will say,
enough, but I don't think he's touching gold with it though. I don't think he's going to win anything.
Nah, me neither. In terms of our review, though, I will say that Denzel's performance is really what got this to like, you know, I am passing it. I mean, barely passing it with a 6, but like a 3 out of 5. But I mean, I think that his performance really elevated my enjoyment of the film. I thought Paul Mescal was good. Pedro Pascal was good. I just kind of didn't like how the movie kind of shortchanged their characters and their arc. It made it less impactful when these facts were held on to for so long that didn't necessarily need to be. Like, if we had known he was Lucius from the first act of the film and he was kind of battling that identity the whole movie, and we were able to connect to that, feeling that he had of inadequacy or whatever, and trying to get back to his mother and like whatever, like the film just doesn't let that breathe. Do you know what I mean? Like it springs it on you, much like Denzel being the enemy. And then the movie's over by the time you have a chance to really like soak it in. Do you know what I mean? And also it was too predictable, where it was like, okay, he's obviously Lucius or Lucius is obviously going to be in this movie. Like, where is
it? Was like one of two things that like it became so distracting to me. But like I said, by the time they actually revealed it, like it became so distracting to me that like as soon as they had the quote, like he reads the quote that she recognizes from the wall and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, now he's Lucius. Like I was like, I couldn't tell which way they were going to go with it. I couldn't tell if they were going to be like, he is Lucius or new Lucius or is like, but somehow Lucius has got to come into play in this movie, because literally he's like the key to the whole thing, and like is completely missing from the entire thing. And I thought, a woefully bad way to construct this entire script. I think if you have Denzel being that snake early, and you have him being that manipulative little person and kind of whispering and like doing like just little bits and little more touches of villainy earlier in the piece, where it's clear he's the main villain of this movie. Even if you have the bumbling emperors in there, like you could have the bumbling emperors in there but have Denzel kill them off even earlier.
Yeah, because you don't dislike Denzel when he kills the emperors, because you don't like the emperors. So you don't really have any reason to dislike Denzel until it's too late.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he doesn't have chance to be birthed as a villain on screen. Like, by the time I was like, oh, Denzel's the motherfucker here. Like, this is the guy. Yeah. I mean, by the time that happened, 5 minutes later, the movie was over. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was a disservice to the whole thing.
This whole thing should have just been this. It should have just been all about the dream of Rome, like all about this dream of Rome. We should have known it was Lucius from the start. We should have gotten a flip of the reveal. It should have been him coming to his mother and like finally being like, "It's me, Mom. I'm Lucius."
Yeah, or say the quote to her face to face.
Yeah,
and then
face to face, so that she knows it. Like it could have played off so well, so emotionally, so great. Instead, it's this really weird, awkward thing where she goes to confront him, and then he's like, "No, I'm not who you think I am." And then like 30 seconds later in the conversation, be like, "I'm not the boy you sent away," or like whatever. It's like, Jesus Christ! Like it's so badly conceived from a script standpoint. Nothing, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not recommending this. There is nothing in this movie that is good enough to redeem how bad the script and how bad the performances. And well, I mean, the performances, if you want to be a cartoon character parody version of Commodus, they did great. But as far badly written and just conceptualized those characters were, the two twin emperors, that element of it is so bad, and the rest of the script is so bad. I think nothing else in this movie is anywhere near good enough to overcome it. And yeah, I mean, point blank, shouldn't have been Maximus's kid. Didn't need to be Maximus's son. Like the what Maximus stood for, what Maximus died for, is all the motivation that he would and should and could have needed. Like, period.
He had that connection to Maximus. I mean, they even showed the flashback of him talking about his armor and he had that connection to like his legacy and his memory as well. So like, we didn't need the lineage parental aspect, or if we did have that, give that to us way earlier in the movie. So that then it's not like we don't need it. Like we don't need it, but we definitely don't need it when we got it. I mean,
it's like you mentioned soap opera-y before. Like that's a soap opera-y element.
Yeah.
Like again,
Dan
with
almost fell out of his chair when they.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's almost literally just like he could have just turned to the camera for a shock reveal, but like and have like that dramatic music like or whatever. Like that's how over the top, ridiculous, and dramatic that moment is. Ugh.
Look, Ridley Scott is a genius. He's one of the greatest of all time. We just think he missed with this one. We think it was underwhelming to be a sequel 20
I think
plus
this is
years
much
in the
better
making.
directed than it is written. I think that it is a
true.
beautiful film. It is
It
like
is.
the action sequences I feel like are well shot, except for the CGI monkeys. Jesus Christ, what were they thinking?
So
But the rest of the action sequences I
didn't
feel
even know
like
they
are
were monkeys.
actually really well shot. Like there's entertainment, there's good stuff in there. There's really good stuff in there. It's just the script is dog shit.
I mean, like I said, the easiest way for me to sum it up to anybody listening is, first of all, I love the first one. I would have given the first one a 10 out of 10. I still do. It's one of my favorite movies of the last 30 years.
Look how disappointed his ghost is. I love that I put him right here where he's kind of looking at you like, huh?
This movie, I mean, I already said is almost a carbon copy, at least in the first 2/3 of, in terms of plot and stuff. So this movie has a lot of the stuff that I really love from an action spectacle standpoint, and I really did love that stuff, which is mostly where my 6 comes from, along with Denzel's juicy performance.
I'm so disappointed.
But I'm just disappointed in it. I mean, I'm just disappointed at the end of the day that I waited 24 years for essentially a spin-off of, some action sequences that I enjoyed 24 years ago with not much better CGI 24 years later either.
It's mystifying how
visual effects. But
how
4 from Nick.
This was.
A 4 from Nick, a 6 from me gives us a 5 overall on Gladiator 2, which is a bummer, man, because this is easily one of the most anticipated movies of the year, I think, for both of us, really. I mean, we were really looking forward to this one when we started talking about the calendar at the beginning of the year, and Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, like all that shit's coming up in the last month of the year, and man, it's a bummer that this is kind of how that last month of the year got started for us. But Nick, let's cheer ourselves up a little bit. Let's talk about Ridley Scott, man. So we're going to do our Mount Rushmore this week, and we're going to give you the 4 films that we think kind of encapsulate the superiority of him as a filmmaker, as a director specifically. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say Gladiator 2 is probably not going to be on there, but I rated the movie higher, so I guess I go first. That's the
well, because you gotta wait now. Now we got a special. I finally got off my ass.
Oh yeah, I gotta throw it to you.
Drop.
Let's do the Mount Rushmore this week. I'll throw it to you.
I finally got off my ass and designed a sound drop for the Rushmore segment. So Gerald, I haven't played this with Gerald yet. He's gonna hear this for the first time.
I'm excited.
Are you? We're gonna go ahead and do the Rushmore, Gerald, for Ridley Scott. More?
Oh God!
It had to be something appropriately dumb enough to fit in with my other sound drops. There it is. That's Jim Carrey's Riddler, ladies and gentlemen, from Batman Forever. If you were curious.
And then you just come in. More?
No. That's still him at the end. It says more.
Oh, it is.
It's totally.
That sounded like you, dude.
No, I called him quick. I was like, Jim, can you record? You could just say the word more for me, and then he
with
he did
inquisitive more, like more.
I mean, I know he didn't sound like himself in that last clip. But trust me, it's totally him. Totally.
By the way, I just realized I have one of the sharks from Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2 on my microphone.
Oh, is that what that is?
My son gave that to me, and I just realized it was a shark. Okay. I get to go first. So I think that I would be canceled by anybody that listens to my show if I did not put Alien from 1979 as the number one George Washington, bam, smack dab on A1, Alien. The original is my first pick for Ridley Scott's Mount Rushmore. I assume you're in agreement there.
Got to be number one. I mean... legitimately, I mean, we talked about it when we talked about Alien Romulus. They still, Cameron did it with Aliens. I mean, completely, changed the genre of it. It wasn't so much sci-fi horror as it was sci-fi action horror.
Right.
But the original Alien is still an utter and complete masterpiece. I adore that movie. It's why and the problem with when you're talking about someone like Ridley Scott, and I think a lot of that came out in our Gladiator 2 review. I think there's a big part of our scores each that is reflected in the disappointment of it being such a fall from the original Gladiator, which is such an incredible movie. I think there's such a huge weight of expectation and everything like that in there that really also hurt the movie pretty badly, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, Alien's got to be number one. Alien's, like I said, absolute masterpiece.
All right,
Incredible.
so that's our 1A. What are you throwing up on, who is it? Teddy? Or Teddy's face, I think.
In heaven.
Lincoln's face? I don't know.
We already talked. I mean, we've been talking about it all day because obviously it's the sequel. But I mean, I'm putting up Gladiator. I'm moving forward in his filmography quite a few years from the original Alien. I know there's another one that's older that you'll probably put on the wall here next, but
I'll consider it.
You know, but I mean, again, the original movie we've mentioned it numerous times now is an absolute masterpiece. It's absolutely not the extended edition though. There's an extended version of Gladiator.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that.
It's trash. It's so bad because they add in all these extra scenes that don't add anything to the movie. They just fluff out like a bunch of extra scenes. Like if you've ever seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Like the actual like theatrical like original version of Gladiator is like incredible. But yeah, it's like Mallrats. Kevin Smith did the same thing with Mallrats, where there's like a director's cut of Mallrats. It's ass. It's so bad because there's just all this extra shit in there that's just pointless.
Which is why they edit movies.
Which is why it's cut in the
director's
first place.
cuts. Yeah, exactly.
It's not like a Lord of the Rings thing where they like cut out wholesale like huge plot points and stuff that because they couldn't fit it into the theatrical runtime and they went back and added it later. It's like, no, here's this dumb fluff that we just thought, I thought this scene was cool. Let's put it in here. Totally destroys the pace of the film, but whatever. Anyway, yeah. The original Gladiator, 2000, Russell Crowe, obviously, incredible movie.
Yeah, I would have definitely thrown that out there had you not, but I agree with you 100%. I mean, we've been talking about that movie, basically how it's so superior to the film we reviewed tonight, so I agree with you. It's got to be on there.
Got to be.
And that's really the Ridley Scott spectacle action adventure shit that we started to see, too, in 2000.
Yep.
You know, obviously, I think there's an obvious pick here, but Alien is, you know, sci-fi, and it's really kind of like the sci-fi film, especially if you're talking about like sci-fi horror. But we can collaborate, okay? Because I'm thinking to kind of round out his Rushmore. You know, we have the sci-fi / horror film, we have the action spectacle with the set pieces and just the beauty that is Gladiator. What about a quieter film that also has a extremely important like place in Hollywood history and for introducing so many stars to us, and it also was a very different type of direction from Ridley. But what about Thelma and Louise from 1991?
I've never seen Thelma and Louise.
Oh, you haven't seen that. I mean, you know of it, right? Susan Sarandon, Gina Davis.
I know it is a movie that exists.
All right, well, that's fine. That's better than nothing, I guess. It introduced the world to Brad Pitt. This is his first like feature film role in that movie.
Nobody thinks about Thelma and Louise when they think about Brad Pitt. Literally no one. No one does.
He was shirtless in that.
Okay, he's been shirtless in a lot of movies, Gerald.
I mean, I wanted to workshop it with you, but I was thinking about that one to have some type of different representation for Ridley. But I mean, the obvious one is Blade Runner from '82. Is that the one you were kind of thinking of?
I think the obvious one is Blade Runner. I mean, there's another one that I'm going to mention when we get up to the fourth pick here. I think that.
Okay.
I think that like nobody ever talks about Thelma and Louise. Everybody still loves Blade Runner. Now I know I do nothing but shit on Denis Villeneuve on this show now because of Dune, but I really loved Blade Runner 2049. I liked it even more than the original. I didn't see the original until after I saw Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, okay.
And I actually reviewed that. I watched it like a long time ago, back in the EFG days with JD from In Session Film was on that episode with me.
If you have another one that you're cool with for the fourth one, then let's do Blade Runner. So we have Alien, Gladiator, and Blade Runner currently. The only thing I was just trying to mix it up a little bit because that's two pretty big sci-fi movies on there. But whatever, those are the three Ridley Scott movies that I think
if you hit a home run and you always hit it out on the right over the right fence instead of the left fence or whatever, like you still call it a home run.
Yeah,
you know. I mean,
I love Thelma and Louise.
I've never seen Thelma and Louise, so I can't speak to its quality. But I also never hear anybody really talk about it either. So
that's fine. All right, what do you got for the final president's head?
So there's three different ones that I think would vie for contention here. Okay. The first of them is, I mean, we got the ancient military and all that kind of stuff in Gladiator, but you've also got a Black Hawk Down in there. A lot of people really hold that one, and I haven't watched that movie in a long time, to be honest.
That's good.
Really, really well directed movie. I think I love it's that kind of guerrilla style to it, where it's very close in on the action. The camera's kind of right there in part of the action, like the whole time. You know what I mean?
Not to be confused with Black Hawk Down, which is different.
Jesus Christ,
different movie.
You've got if you want to dip your toes back into sci-fi yet again, you could also look at a movie like The Martian.
I thought it was so good, man. So well directed.
It's such a good movie, and I mean, for the fact that Matt Damon just throws that movie on his shoulders, it's literally just him by himself for almost the entire runtime of the movie, and it's as entertaining and watchable as it is great. I'm gonna throw another one at you though. I got a third secret one here, but I'm gonna give a shout out to our favorite person on this podcast. You know him, you love him. He pays you $1 every month, Mr. Brad, the old man Brad himself.
No, we're not doing Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven director's cut, not the original.
Oh, wow.
The director's cut is incredible. It's an absolutely like you talk about historical, epic masterpiece. Kingdom of Heaven director's cut is also, I think, of to vie for that. That's my dark horse, Brad. I'm here fighting for you, brother. I'm here fighting for you for it. Gerald, if he says no, then it's Gerald's fault.
Did you ever see American Gangster with Denzel?
Nope.
That's another really good one where he plays Frank Lucas. Is based.
That's why we didn't do a Denzel, because I know Gerald posted over at the Discord that we're doing a Denzel Rushmore. I don't think I've seen any big Denzel movie that I haven't seen Training Day. I haven't seen a bunch of Denzel stuff that I would put on.
Honestly, I would say of the ones you just mentioned, I mean it's another sci-fi, but I would say The Martian is probably my favorite of the ones you mentioned.
It's a little bit of a different type of movie compared to, I mean, Kingdom of Heaven obviously is, you could kind of see the parallels in that, and a Gladiator, historical, epic, action, drama, all that kind of stuff. And Black Hawk Down, of course, modern military, but still playing in that same military action kind of space.
Well, you pick.
The Martian's a very different movie. No, you can't make me do it.
The Martian.
Those are my choices.
The Martian's my pick of the ones you mentioned. Black Hawk Down would be my runner-up, and Kingdom of Heaven was decent, but I can't really remember it, so I don't.
Gotta watch the director's cut.
I don't feel good about putting that on the Mount Rushmore, but I mean,
if
Black Hawk Down, like you said, is modern warfare.
Stop saying Black Hawk Down.
The Martian is, sci-fi, but it's definitely a
different type
introspective,
of movie,
right? Yeah, it's a character piece for
How is Prometheus have a 7 on IMDb? What?
Hey, Prometheus is not bad. It's got some good stuff going on.
It's the prettiest piece of shit I've ever seen.
Yeah, I know.
Actually, Gladiator 2 might have taken that throne, because it's a pretty movie, but man, woo.
All right, what's the 4th spot on Rushmore?
Put The Martian up there. I feel like it's a different enough kind of movie, and I can't in good faith argue for Kingdom of Heaven director's cut when I argued against Thelma and Louise because I haven't seen it. So.
Yeah, I like that. So we got Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, and The Martian. Those are our 4 films for this week's Mount Rushmore. Play that sound drop one more time. I want to hear.
Oh my god!
I want to take it in.
More? It's definitely still Jim at the end. You can tell, right?
God damn, that's so good. All right, there you go, guys. That was our discussion on Gladiator 2. We just didn't like it as much as we wanted to. What a disappointment. It had some good things going for it, but overall, just a disappointment. And I know Nick echoes that sentiment as well. And then our Mount Rushmore of Mr. Ridley Scott. Regardless of what we thought of Gladiator 2, he is one of the greats, and he does not give a shit. He's a fearless filmmaker who just makes whatever the hell
he does.
Whatever his vision is.
He is a grumpy old man, and we love him for it.
Sharks in the Coliseum? Sure, let's do it. Fuck it.
Nick, listen, if everything else about this movie would have been great, you want to know how many fucks I would have given about Sharks in the Coliseum? Absolutely none. Because it was still entertaining, and I don't care. That's what I'm going to the theater for. I ain't going to the theater for a history lesson. I don't care.
Did you see... on the press tour too. They were talking to Ridley about Christopher Nolan. Did you see that clip that's been going viral from last week? The interviewer asked him, like, did you see Christopher Nolan said that you were one of the filmmakers that really inspired him, and just like this long kind of thing or whatever. And they're like, Mr. Scott, what did you think about that? And he was like, oh, it brought a tear to my eye. And they're like, really? And he's like, no. But then he's like, thanks, Chris. Like, he doesn't give a shit. You know what I mean? So he's just doing his thing. But we kind of celebrated Ridley Scott here tonight. Nick, that's it. What are we doing next week? Next week we are...
the schedule says movie swap.
We're doing our first movie swap.
I don't even know what that is.
So let's tell the people real quick. So we're doing our first movie swap. I gave Nick a movie to watch that he's never seen that I think he should see. And he did the same thing to me. I've never seen the film that he pitched at me. We're going to come together and do a mini review of both films on next week's episode. Nick is going to be watching Misery, the Stephen King adapted film from we talked about on the episode that I was surprised you hadn't seen when we did the Mount Rushmore of single location movies.
Yep.
Stars Miss Kathy Bates, and because it stars
Miss Kathy Bates episode. It's the Kathy Bates episode. Yep.
And because it starred Kathy Bates, you said, "Hey, have you seen About Schmidt?" And it turns out I haven't. I've seen like a scene or two, in passing in popular culture or whatever. But I've never seen the movie all the way through.
He's seen the one scene though, folks. We all know the one he's seen.
Maybe. So I'm going to watch About Schmidt, and he's going to watch Misery, and then we'll come together next week and we'll review both of them on the same episode. We'll talk through them, I guess I should say. I'll tell you what I thought of mine and of yours, and you tell me what you thought of mine, and we'll argue for an hour. It'll be great. Nick, I appreciate it, buddy. Do me a favor. Wear the leather. What do they call them? Skirts? What do they call them? Kilts. The leather kilts that they fight in with the dicks flying around down there. That feels really dangerous, by the way. You think? Roman battle with the pecker just slinging down there? Don't you think that's kind of dangerous? No? All right. Well, it just doesn't seem like a lot of protection to me, but I don't know. All right, Nick, thanks for talking Gladiator and Ridley Scott with me, man. I'll talk to you next week, and we'll get into our Kathy Bates discussion.